Hello again, everyone. This video is about my recent trip to Russia and 10 things about Russia that surprised me. There were a lot more than 10 things, but there was I made a list about this big, but I picked out 10 things, I think 10 of the best. And I tell you where I was. I was in a city called Domodedovo. I pronounce it Domodedovo, but it's actually Domodedovo, and it's about 25 miles south of Moscow. So here it is on a map, and you can see it's circled by the red circle there. Here's a view of a little part of Domodedovo from my buddy Eugene's apartment, about 150 feet in the sky. So you can see kind of what it looks like. Like I say, there's a lot of things that surprised me. And so let's get started with the 10 things. Number one, I experienced no culture shock, or very little. That surprised me, because we get this idea of Russia as this mystical, distant mystical land full of strange people. No. It's like visiting Canada. I mean, you go to Canada, you know you're in a foreign country, but it's not that foreign. Somebody asked me about what I thought about Russia, and I said, it's different, but the same. It's I would say probably hugely the same as the United States, but there's some difference, of course. You know, you got the language and this and that and the other thing, a few customs and so forth. What's interesting is that the Russians that have come to Arizona that I've talked to, they say the same thing. You know, they have very little culture shock coming to America. So that right there should tell you something, shouldn't it? You know, there's not that much between us, between Russia and America. Number two, I love to cook. So I go into the stores around Domodedovo there, and I go mental. I couldn't believe all the stuff, the variety of food in the stores. And like I said in another video, Lenta rapidly became my favorite supermarket. I just love the place. Here's a picture of me with my Lenta card, you know, standing in line buying my stuff. It's pretty cool. So I snapped a few pictures in some various supermarkets, not just Lenta, but some others. And so here we go. You like meat? We got meat. We got a lot of meat here. All kinds of meat. You got some fish? We got fish, even more fish. Still more fish. Cheese? Plenty of cheese. Lots of cheese. And then back to the fish. We've got more fish. Shrimp. There's a big, huge thing of 1,000 pounds of shrimp, and these are big ones. They're not the little tiny ones. Got a fish tank. You know, you order live fish. And produce. Plenty of produce. Even got some melons here. How about crab-flavored potato chips? They even have lobster-flavored potato chips. That was pretty interesting. If it sounds like I'm making a huge deal about this, I am. Because it wasn't that long ago in my memory that Russians were standing in line to buy stuff. You know, they standing in one or two or three different lines. You know, one line to pick it out, another line to pay for it, and another line to pick it up. And you spend hours in line to buy something. You might see a line, you don't know what they're standing in line for, but you get in line because it's got to be something. Maybe you can trade it for something. And so here, they've got supermarkets stuffed with things. Now, in other parts of Russia, it might be different. Like I say, I went to only one small city, so somebody may say, well, they're going hungry in another part of Russia. Well, maybe so. But that's not because they're for want of food. That's because they have distribution problems, you know, with the infrastructure, with the logistics. But if there's plenty of food in Domodedovo, you know, nobody's going hungry. That was pretty interesting. Number three, no sales tax. Now that kind of surprised me. And here's, I got my, I saved some of my Lenta receipts. You see right here. And that surprised me that they don't have any sales tax. There's 5 states in the U.S. that don't have a sales tax. I believe they're Alaska, Oregon, Montana, New Hampshire, and Delaware. But there's no sales tax. So I get to Russia, no sales tax. Here's I took a picture of one of my receipts. And here's one. I bought 1,320 rubles worth of stuff. That's a little less than $22. And so I gave the cashier 1,400 rubles, and I got back 80 rubles, which is about something like $1.30. Okay, so that was pretty interesting. No sales tax. So I thought that was, number 4. This one blew my mind. The first thing when I get to where I'm staying, I drop my luggage, pull out the laptop, plug it into their Wi-Fi, and push up Drudge. I log on to Google and get Drudge. I said, if they got Drudge here, I'm okay, the Drudge report. Boom, up comes Drudge. And it's a huge cosmic coincidence. There's right on Drudge, Russia test disconnecting from the internet. Now, how about that? I go, whoa, I had to take a picture of it. The headline is a bit disingenuous. I think what Russia is doing is they're not disconnecting from the internet, but they're trying to figure out a way to still stay connected if the U.S., if and when the U.S. cuts them off. Because that's down the road maybe. They might say, okay, fine, and isolate Russia. So Russia says, well, in order to keep everything going, the banking system and everything else, let's test to see if we can continue the internet without being disturbed. So that's what that was all about. But I thought that was hugely interesting, is that I pushed up Drudge and their headline was, disconnecting from the internet. Number 5, English words. You see English words everywhere, which was pretty funny. If you can read the Cyrillic alphabet, then you'll find these English words all over the place. For example, what's funny is their stop signs. Here's a stop sign, and it's just a rectangular white thing, and it says S-T-O-P in Cyrillic. Stop. I don't know what the Russian word for stop is, but they use the English word. Toilet. Toilet's another one. And they spell it toilet. It phonetically sounds toilet. Here's a sign for the elevator, the lift. And of course, they obligingly put it in English underneath, but on top is a lift in Cyrillic. Here's what's funny. At the Domodedovo Municipal Forest, they have a beautiful birch forest there. Just lovely. And in the wintertime, they have skiing trails. Summer, they're hiking trails, but in the wintertime, they're skiing. And when you know it, they've got a sign. At the start of the skiing trail, this route, it says start in Cyrillic. And at the end, it says finish in Cyrillic. So I thought that was pretty funny. You see all kinds of English signs when going around, like various shopping malls and this and that. Here's a sign, a fixed price or a sport fit style, something like that. Another for Urban Step. I guess this is the shoe store. Here's a sale sign, 80% off. In English, mid-season sale, 50% off. And a strip club, a burlesque joint. Hey, how about that? I took maybe 100 of these pictures and about all the English signs. I thought that was just kind of really fascinating seeing that. And my buddy Eugene says, well, he said maybe like 60% of the words in the Russian language have an English derivative, which makes it a lot easier to learn the language. You can spot it in English. You go, well, okay, I know what that means. You think maybe it's in Arizona we have a lot of Spanish signs all over the place, but that's because we have an international border with Mexico. Arizona has a border, and then there's Mexico. So you get a lot of loan words, a lot of the language comes across, and you can't help but learn some Spanish if you live here. But does America and Russia share a common border? Yeah, they do. There's a maritime border. It's right between Little Diomede and Big Diomede, right on the international date line. A lot of people don't think that we share a common border. But it's like in the middle of nowhere, and not a lot of English is going to have Russians going to go back and forth. But still, you know, I mean, if you go to Alaska, you'll see Russian, a lot of Russian words around. Okay, number 6. This was kind of interesting. Russians are HWP, height, weight, proportionate. I didn't pick up on that until like I was there a few days, and I'm saying, wait a minute, I don't really see any really heavy people. Like here in Arizona and elsewhere in the U.S., you see a lot of obese and morbidly obese people. You don't see that in Russia. I mean, you'll see some chubbies, you'll see some people that are stout, you'll see some people that could afford to lose 10 or 20 pounds, but you don't see any of these really morbidly obese people. And I'm on the train, and I see this guy, and he's like morbidly obese. And I'm, oh man, that's a huge guy. And it was, you know, I took a picture of him, and I think maybe that's when I thought of it. I said, wait a minute, I haven't seen these people around, where in Arizona and elsewhere in the U.S. they're a very common sight. I read somewhere that in another 20, 30 years, something like 50% of the American population will be morbidly obese. I mean, that's like a huge number. So that was pretty interesting. Number 7, this one fascinated me. And my buddy Eugene, he couldn't figure out what I'm trying to say here. He didn't think it was unusual, but I did. These beautiful girls walking by themselves. They're like just walking down the street, and they're alone. And I couldn't believe it. And I said, wait a minute, what's going on here? So I started taking pictures of them, you know, surreptitiously. And here's a few examples. Here's a chick walking in Red Square by herself. And here's another one. You're just walking along. Here's a blonde in a park. You're just walking along. Here's a little hottie walking on the Arbat. You know, she's just strolling along. And another one in Gorky Park. And here we got another one on the Arbat. And they're just walking. You know, there's plenty of space around them. And they're just walking along. I don't know. I didn't look to see if there were like a lot of guys walking alone. I just noticed these beautiful girls. I mean, it's probably not uncommon to see guys walking alone, but good-looking young ladies, unaccompanied, you know. You don't see that in Arizona. You know, I mean, you just don't. So, you know, I can't figure it out. Maybe I'm making too big of a deal out of it. Number 8, ramps. You see ramps everywhere. I thought, wow, wait a minute. You know, because in Arizona and elsewhere in the U.S., we have to have ramps. You know, the Americans Disabilities Act or whatever it's called, the ADA, you have to have ramps. It's a federal law. And that's for all these morbidly obese people on their mobility scooters, because they got to get up into places. People in wheelchairs, but mostly these motorized scooters. So I'm looking around. I see the ramps, you know, like there's ramps all over the place. Got ramps, 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 ramps. But I don't see any mobility scooters. And then I figured it out. They're for baby buggies. Everybody's got babies, you know, pushing these strollers all over the place. I wish I had taken more pictures of people in strollers, people pushing babies in strollers, because they're like all over. But that's what the ramps are for, not for mobility scooters. Number 9, I was impressed by the wide variety they manufactured of automobiles. Some you don't, a lot you don't see here. The reason why there's so few makes of automobiles in the United States is because the big 3, the big huge manufacturers used to be known as the big 3. Now there's Toyota, Hyundai, and maybe one other. They keep the other manufacturers out, and they have, you know, usually get with the help of the federal government and these safety standards and CAFE and fuel and whatever it is, they keep them out. So you don't get the wide variety. Russia really has no automobile manufacturing to speak of. I mean, they make some, but they import a lot of vehicles. And so the standards, it's not an exclusionary economy when it comes to automobiles. So you see all these kinds. And I just took a few pictures of them here. Here's like a Mitsubishi truck. I believe this one is an old Lada or something. You know, that's a Russian vehicle. Here's a Jeep. Here's a Rubicon. And there's a Renault. I have no idea what this car is. I think this one is an Opel. Here's another Mitsubishi, a Jaguar. You know, I might make a separate video of all the automobiles that I see there. One thing that I did see interesting about Russian automobiles is you don't see them banged up. You don't see them dinged up. Like in Arizona here, I mean, like every third or fourth car has a ding of some sort. I mean, even my vehicle has a couple little dings. You don't see that there in Russia. And I think it's because back in the day, vehicles were so hard to get. An automobile was so hard to get. You had to like wait 3 years for one. And then you got like this little piece of crap Lada that actually needed a lot of work to get it on the road even. And so guys took care of them. They took care of their vehicles. They babied them because they needed babied. They weren't that reliable. So I think that's the way. People really take care of their cars in Russia. We're here in the United States. We have a disposable economy. You know, slam it around and you sell it and buy something else. So that was pretty interesting. And number 10, the last one, which I thought was fascinating, and I might make another video on this alone, is the residential architecture. Here in the U.S., we have like, you know, maybe only like a few styles of homes. You might have a colonial or a Cape Cod, you know, you got a Southwestern or a Tudor, farmhouse, something like that, you know, and they all fall into kind of groups. And I don't know what it is, whether these homeowner associations or building codes or whatever, or whether just, I don't know, but in Russia, they got all these different kinds of designs that really kind of just fascinate the heck out of me. And so I had to take some pictures of them. And for want of a better word, I called it, for want of a better name, I called it early modern eclectic. It turns out that there is a branch of architecture called eclectic. But eclectic kind of means a little bit of everything. You just kind of throw it up against the wall, and if it sticks, fine. You know. So, but I really like these houses for their individuality, because these people are thinking outside the box. They're not following any plan. They just go, well, let's try this, see if this works. So here's a few examples. And keep in mind, these homes aren't cheap. They're about $250,000. These around Domodedovo there. And so here we go here. Let's see. Here's something, I don't know what, this looks vaguely southwest, maybe Spanish, Spain, something like that. I'm not sure what's happening with this house here. Here's what I mean by eclectic, this one here. This is pretty interesting. This was interesting, kind of cozy. And I don't know, I guess this one works here. Is this a Swiss chalet? Maybe, could be a Swiss chalet. And there's a pile of brick if there ever was one. Look at that one. And then here's something I call making a statement. Look at that, that thing's something. So that's what I mean by Russian architecture, kind of interesting. Now, again, I was in only one small part in one small city, or a large city, but a small part of a large city. But elsewhere, it could be something totally different. So you just get an idea of what I'm talking about. But anyway, that right there, that's the 10 things about Russia that surprised me. And I hope you enjoyed it. And I'll be making some more videos here shortly on my experiences in Russia. And as always,